Hi, this isn't the video I would normally do because I'm using my voice, but I wanted to rant about a few things regarding Skullgirls Mobile currently because the game's in a bit of a questionable state because of how some aspects of the game aren't working as intended. Firstly, I'll just talk about how for a few weeks, I think it's been at least a month and a half, 2 months, some people haven't been able to access their Rift's history, and basically, people would just be stuck on a loading screen until they were eventually kicked out of their history, but they couldn't see who attacked them or they couldn't see how many points people scored. It happened to me twice, but I know some people who've been affected by it literally every week, and they'll be affected by it for days at a time. So it basically put them at a massive disadvantage for Rift battles, which, well, isn't really great if you're trying to go for the higher scores and going for the better rewards. And it also meant that, hackers were getting away with fighting people's Rift bases with characters that would be completely impossible to use on like the hardest nodes. And they could score whatever they wanted to, or they could just score abnormally high, and people wouldn't be able to do anything about it because they wouldn't be able to hit revenge on the person that attacked them. And it was stated during the announcement in the main Skullgirls Mobile Discord that these issues would be resolved, but in fact, they haven't really been resolved. Some people are still experiencing these issues. So there's old bugs that are still present, and from the hotfix, there's been even more bugs to Rift battles, such as you can try using fighters that you've already used on another node, but you'll get this like error screen if you do that. But the game should just not let you do that anyways, because it usually says, "Oh, you've already used this fighter. Use a different fighter on this node." But no, the game will let you try and pick a fighter you've already used, but it'll just go through 10 seconds worth of waiting and then an error screen, which is going to confuse people anyways because they could have just forgotten they've used the same fighter on a different node, and if they see the error screen they could just think, oh, we're stuck, we can't fight at all in Rifts, but people might not be aware of the fact they used said fighter on a different node. Also, when you finish a node in Rifts, if you try and press the attempts button on whatever node you're looking at and try and see what someone's used on your node, it just will say, oh, this node hasn't been attempted yet. This goes both ways. This can happen to you when you're fighting someone's base. It just won't show who you've used on that node. Or if someone's seen that you attacked them and they try and see who you used, they won't be able to see anything, which lets hackers get away with things even more so. Whatever this is, I shouldn't have to explain why this is wrong. It happens every single fight you do, no matter if you win or lose. So you could win all the nodes on someone's base, apart from the last node you do, and it could say -4, or if you've lost on a node, it'll go down anyways. It could go down to -5. It's kind of obvious that this shouldn't happen. Though I'm not going to be a negative Nancy about it. The devs have communicated quite well with the community, to be honest. They're aware of the bugs and they want to make sure they're fixed once and for all. So hopefully Rift is just a little more bearable until it eventually gets reworked one day. That's pretty much it for Rift battles, I think. I want to see it get reworked, and I want you to be able to use a more varied selection of fighters, because the same, between 10 and 15 fighters are used in every single high Rifter's base, and the meta right now isn't really friendly. The very, very top Rifters nodes, you'll see uninvested Assassin's Creeds, and it just feels like that shouldn't be the meta, because why should you have to not fully invest in a fighter for it to work better than the fully invested version of a fighter? This is the same reason why people don't like Critless so much, because you're avoiding the character marquee, which is supposed to be what you build after your character skill tree, and you're sacrificing some of your attack stats to have quote-unquote critless stats that aren't really critless. You still have 5% crit rate, so you can have a 1 in 20 chance to crit. But it's all just to make sure you have a better time fighting tainted blood, pain needles, and so on. Tainted blood is another can of monkeys that I'm just not willing to open today because it's so hated. And the developers have stated that they want to rework on some of the worst characters, which is great. They want to make sure that all the characters have a chance to shine in ways that aren't toxic per se. But it's like, even with the nerf of don't poke the viewer, which a lot of people hated in Rifts, tainted blood is still a very annoying marquee, even with critless. Can I just say, the fact that if you just search the word critless into Google, the very first thing that'll show up is the critless page of the SKULLGIRLS Mobile wiki, which I think is just really funny. It just goes to show that the only place you'll find critless is SKULLGIRLS Mobile. And it shows that it's not very popular. And that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about for Rift Battles. I'm gonna move on to guilds, because guild battles was awaited for years and years, and well, to be honest, it's a lot worse than it could have been. There's some good parts about guild battles, like there's some variety in what you can use, although Annie's been, well, doing a lot more damage than any other variant, really. And it sucks because, I mean, I want there to be loads of diversity, and I said it for Rip Battles as well. I want more characters to shine, and I think the same for guild battles as well. I want more and more variants to shine, and it's kind of happening with the new double that's come out, Grandmother. She's hitting some quite big numbers. They're just not enough to be comparable to that for Annie. I was going to post a guild video soon, at least after the new boss comes out, because I have no idea what's going to be good against Gritty Kitty, and I'll be quite annoyed if it's just the same Annie strategy. Because, well, for Doomsayer, right now it's Firebranded, Lucky Law, and Wave Warrior. Lucky Law, I'm quite surprised, is such a good support. I'd say she's the best in the game in terms of damage, because she gives you so much crit damage, and then for, let's say, Dark Elements, that'll be another 100% bonus damage if you get the 5 stacks of Enrage. And if you pair with Wave Warrior, she just does a heck ton of damage. So people are now just using that team specifically. Before, they were using like either Sketchy or Ionic Icon, or I did see someone use Raw Nerve. But people are reaching like the 400 millions, and I think close to 500 million on Doomsayer. For Undying Warrior, you had a few more options. You could do Annie, well, Wave Warrior, or Ninja Star. For Wave Warrior, you would do Raw Nerve at the start, and I think you could pick between, I think you'd do Reigning Champ, I'm not quite sure. And for Ninja Star, you would use Hell's Bell, or if it had the Do Not Pet modifier, which gives Undying Warrior Precision, you'd use Mean One, because then you just convert more debuffs. And it's a bit more diversity, compared to Doomslayer. Or you could do Perminator and you would do what was it? I think it was Raw Nerve and Pea Shooter. But that's if you had the crit rate and the meter gain on Perminator. So she was quite hard to build, but it's a character that's not Annie, so that's good. But now that I think you're supposed to use Wave Warrior, Raiding Champ, and Lucky Law, and I think that does like similar to Doomsayer's damage, like the 400s. I think 500 million. I mean, I think support Annie, just not Annie's. I think support Umbrellas are just that strong, which is a bit crazy when you think about it. When Umbrella first came out, she wasn't that great of a character. She was kind of just there until Death Wish came out, and everyone glazed Death Wish. But her supports are quite strong now. I mean, it's giving Umbrella a bit of spotlight, which is great, to be honest, in my opinion. But yeah, I'm just hoping that there's a bit more diversity in terms of characters that you can use against Kitty, because it's just been Annie. It's just been Annie for the last two bosses that have come out, and I can get that Lucky Law will probably be meta. She's a support, and you don't really have to build her. You just have to build a signature ability part of the skill tree, which is fine. I'm fine with that, but she's very strong compared to some other supports. I'll compare it to Mad Malice for a second. Mad Malice gives you a 25% chance to gain Enrage if you crit. Lucky Law gives you a 50% chance to give you Enrage. Well, not Enrage, but like any buff based on whatever elements in the party. But with the new update, the buffs where it'll prioritize buffs that haven't been put on your fighter, it's quite easy just to get all the buffs. And even then, without Dark Elements, you're still getting 100 crit damage from the air element, because Lucky Law's an air element variant. So she might just be a little bit overwhelming, especially for a gold variant. I'm comparing her to a diamond variant right now, and the gold's better. As nice as it is to have an Umbrella support character, I think she might just need a bit of tweaking, because she's very strong for a gold character. And I know that like a lot of characters released lately have been quite strong. Soulbound, say Nightshade, the new Eliza Silver. She's a silver variant that prevents revives of segment hits. That's quite strong for a silver variant, and all these new variants are quite strong, and I can see that the devs are trying to get the meta to shift in some way to get more variants viable for different game modes, which, yeah, great. I like that, but I think Lucky Law is just a bit too overwhelming with the amount of damage bonus she gives to your team. Other than the lack of variation in what you can use for guild battles, I do think it is a bit repetitive, but that's mainly because guilds is still in development, sort of. They still need the devs still need to add more stuff, which I can understand. It just makes it overall repetitive though, with just fighting the same the same 2-3 this week's boss, and just doing all the quests. But I'm hopeful that the more stuff that releases afterwards will make guilds more fun generally. I will mention that it is a bit difficult to get gifts for your guilds, because after you do the milestone to the bosses and you do your guild ops quests, you don't get many guild gifts in general. Like, I think it'd be nice if you could get guild gifts as often as you get like friends gifts, just so people have a higher likelihood of getting stuff like Big Baddie, all the key relics and the keys, and universal retakes. I think having so many universal retakes has helped in changing your fighter's stats for whatever game mode you're using your fighters in. But it doesn't really solve the RNG that's with retakes. Like, you could use dozens of retakes on a single move to get a single stat and you still won't get it, which is quite annoying. Speaking from experience anyways, but hopefully some development into retakes also happens. I can see if they made like the RNG part of retakes a lot more generous, and they'd have to maybe decrease the chance to get them from guild gifts. I could understand that if they make it more generous, but otherwise it's so RNG reliant that you kind of just get the rewards from your guild at the end of the Monday and just hope you reroll that one stat. That's all the issues I have with guilds. I'll talk a bit about realms. I'm not quite sure what could be done to parallel realms to make it better, but maybe just more game modes within parallel realms that can be fun for like veteran players like myself. You can see I'm pretty much just throwing random fighters at the enemies if I lose on a node, and it works just because I can throw as many fighters as I want at one enemy and it'll eventually die anyways. So maybe just a mode of parallel realms that makes it so much harder, where say for example you wouldn't be able to just throw your fighters at an enemy until it dies. I feel like that just negates the fact that No Mercy is supposed to be challenging. There is a suggestion in the SKULLGIRLS Mobile Discord server on reworking realms entirely, and I love the suggestion. It's just really detailed into what should be done to make realms a fun game mode for veterans and like newer players at the same time without making it too difficult or too easy. And I think it's just great. I think having like a few variations of realms will make it a challenge for veteran players, which is what they want really, so the game isn't so easy for them. And for newer players, it won't be too challenging at the same time. That's pretty much all I wanted to say for realms. I'm just waiting for a rework as big as that's happened, since there's not much else you can do for realms until something as big as that happens to change it altogether. I do want to end on like a positive note, since a lot of this rant has just been all negative, but I'm quite excited for the Beowulf origin story that's coming out next month. I think that's a good step towards making the game better overall, because we haven't had an origin story, let alone any sort of update to story mode for years. Like, I've been playing since 2020 and I have not seen any change at all since then. It's like a nice change to all the competitivity we've had in other game modes. So definitely Rifts and Realms is very competitive in those two game modes. You get the highest amount of points and you or your guild will get these rewards at the end of the week. And prize fights is not nearly as competitive, obviously, but it's still like, oh, if you're in this top bracket, you get these rewards, and people try and aim for those rewards. But yeah, like I said, it's a good step to take, having a more relaxing sort of like add-on to a game mode that isn't competitive and people can just go through it at their own pace without having to worry about completing it in a certain amount of time. It's also a massive win for lore players, because we haven't had much update to the lore since Marie came out in Second Encore, but I know the universe between Second Encore and Mobile is different. They're not exactly the same, so there's not much to say about that, but it's a good thing for lore players. The last thing that I wanted to talk about really was the survey that we were able to answer, and a question that really confused me at first, but I kind of get now, is if guest stars and if we want to keep them in the game or have them removed from the game. And I think a lot of people don't really want guest stars in the game because they're really expensive. They cost almost the same as a diamond variant, and they give stats which have basically changed the meta. You want specific guest stars on your guild variants, on I think I think it's both guild bosses right now, where you want that water element mech support guest star. I can't remember the name. It's sort of the same in Rifts as well. You want guest stars on all 12 of your defenders, and you want guest stars for all your offensive variants, and it just makes building characters so much more expensive because you could get a guest star and spend 5 million coins on it, and it just doesn't roll well. You get a 7-6-6 roll. That's happened to me so many times. I've built like between 15 and 20 guest stars, and I've maxed that many out, and the amount of low rolls I've had on guest stars is like embarrassing on my part, I can't lie. I think the whole like tag and assist mechanic is really cool, and I want to see that kept in the game. But with how expensive guest stars are right now and how much they've changed the meta for the worst part, they just need a massive overhaul for players to be happy with guest stars. Other than all these, I'm still hopeful that the game will improve, and I really wanted to improve. I've played this game for almost 6 years, so I'm hoping it gets better, and I'm quite positive that it'll happen eventually. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this little rant. I don't know if I want to do this more often. See how I feel. Okay, so I was gonna end it there, but when I was editing this video, there was another hotfix that was supposed to fix all the rift bugs. But some people are still locked out of their history, so it's quite a bad situation right now in Rift Battles.